Greetings to everybody. We are continuing with the chapter 16 of the Gita, talks on the Gita by Vinobha Bhave. And we have come to the topic of conflict between the divine and the demonical tendencies. So in this chapter, chapter 16 of this topic on the yoga of discerning the divine and the demonic nature. In this chapter, it is described that there are about 26 divine qualities, which are known as Daivaya Sampatti. They are all good qualities that lead us to liberation. And there are 6 demonic qualities that lead us to bondage. And all those are described gradually. But today's topic in this, Sri Vinobha Bhave is talking about non-violence. He lists non-violence as a single divine quality, ahimsa. It's mentioned in chapter 16. It's a verse of Bhagavad Gita 2. And it is described as a transcendental virtue which belongs to those endowed with the divine nature, the nature of non-violence. I don't know how to repeat that sloka of the Bhagavad Gita which goes ahimsa, satyam, akrodha, something like that. But the word ahimsa is actually translated as non-violence or harmlessness, not to harm. And for that, they give 4 kinds of non-violence. Non-violence in thought. For us, spiritual seekers, this is very, very important. Because of our meditation, our thought is very powerful. When you entertain violence in your thought, it affects others. And because of that, it affects us also. Because what you radiate comes back to you. So non-violence in thought needs to be practiced meticulously, which is not harboring ill will, hatred, malicious thoughts towards any living being. And practicing compassion in our thoughts and action and refraining ourselves from causing physical pain to other people or even animals. It comes under this thought of non-violence in thought. I will give you a personal example where I experienced this violence of thought from somebody. Several months ago, or just a few weeks ago, the middle of the night I am waking up and somebody who really hates me, they are just hitting me hard on my back, in my spine. And I literally couldn't breathe and I got up because it was so real. When I woke up, I didn't understand why it's happening, and I can clearly see the person. So I prayed to Master, and immediately the guidance was like to clean the person out of that violence state of being that they are at now, that state of moment. So even for abhyasis, this is a dangerous thing. If at that moment, if somebody is doing that to Master or something out of anger, still the consequences will be there. So thought has to be pure. That is the first level. Because in your thought is non-violent, your word is non-violent, your action is non-violent, the result is non-violent, your state of being is non-violent. So we have to practice this. A lot of times we think, because people don't know what you're thinking. And we are pretending to be compassionate, we are pretending to be calm and quiet and sweet and talking sweet talk. Inside and outside has to be one, or else the consequences are there. We may think that nobody knows what the violence in your mind, but the consequences of that we have to suffer. So it comes under non-violence in thought, not to harbor ill will, hatred, or malicious thoughts towards anybody, and the solution lies in practicing compassion in your actions and refraining ourselves causing pain to others. The next level is non-violence in word. So you don't speak harsh words, unkind words, and talking bad about others. When you talk bad about others behind their back, you think that you're not directly telling them something. But when they hear that you have talked bad about them, that agitates others. That also has consequences. So you see why thought, word, and action are have to be so purified. So not to speak harsh, unkind words or slander somebody that causes pain or agitation to others. We can speak truthfully, but there we have to learn to use gentle language. A lot of times I had to work on myself. I speak the truth, but sometimes it comes out so strong. It could hurt others. So I had to work a lot on myself to refine the way I speak, even though I am speaking the truth. So speaking truthfully, but you gently using speech that uplifts others than wounding those people. This is a training we have to train ourselves. And this is why Revered Daji has been so continuously asking all of us to take this class of heartful communication, which was known as non-violent communication. So the sages from ages have been putting importance on this aspect of non-violence. We only look at violence as like, if you killed somebody is violent, or if you beat up your wife is violent. But this violence goes into the refined fields of the thought. It is not just mundane physical action of that nobody saw you hit other person. Even talking behind somebody's back is a violent behavior. And ordinary people may not see the consequences, but for spiritual people who want to move into these higher sacred dimensions, all these matters because we are trying to move into the field of love. And if we have these tendencies, can we merge? No. So that is why we work upon ourselves. And next comes this field of non-violence in action, physical deeds, not causing injury or death to any living creature. And here, why would somebody go to such an extent of trying to beat up somebody or something? Because they're so hurt inside. How to get that solved? When somebody does so much bad things, you rebel inside yourself. So how to overcome that? That is where we have to develop this immense divine qualities of forgiveness, compassion, and empathy. Even in our thoughts, seeing the same, which is known as Purushottama Yoga, seeing the same self in all the beings. So we see how gradually the great master Lord Krishna is bringing us to this state of being of love by pointing it out, small atoms of those imbalances, the virtues we need to develop, the demonic qualities we need to let go. Non-violence is a virtue, violence is a demonic quality. And how do you let go of this demonic quality? In heartfulness, we have the cleansing technique. We take the sittings to release those impressions. We use the technique at bedtime, asking for forgiveness, deep asking forgiveness for the wrongs that have committed by us knowingly or unknowingly. This fact that our thoughts can hurt others is an unknowing fact. You don't realize we're doing it. Because when we are ready to beat up somebody, we know we are doing it because it is a physical gross action. But internally, it's going on, cursing people. That is sometimes unknown activity. So for that, we have to repent. Lord, for the thoughts that I have entertained all day, that are not in tune with my field of love, forgive me for those, for I truly want to be that state of love. So this spiritual non-violence is recognizing the divine essence in all the beings and refusing to injure that sacredness, that sacred unity. And why does all this stem from? Where does this all stem from? This violence activity? Because of ego, domination, and want to exploit other people. Those are the demonic qualities. Letting go of ego, letting go of this domination spirit, and try to exploit other people for your own selfish desires. So spiritual non-violence is recognizing the divine essence in all. Again, bottoms down to Purushottama Yoga, seeing divinity in everybody. So living with awareness that hurting another is hurting our own self. What does Purushottama Yoga teach us? That divinity is in everybody. So when you come to that state of awareness, you realize that hurting another person is hurting oneself. Automatically it comes back. That is why when you hurt somebody, you suffer also. You say some word and they are in pain, you are automatically in pain. No exception. So living with awareness that hurting another person is hurting oneself, and that is the highest expression of this non-violence, and that arises from self-realization. So the depth of this ahimsa non-violence evolves from these four levels of the body, the mind, the speech, and the spirit, and it leads the seeker from this outer restraint to this inner harmony, and ultimately to this realization of oneness in all beings. All are one. So this is where Vinobha Bhave is going next in this topic of ahimsa. He says 4 stages in the development of non-violence. Thus, the divine and the demonical qualities are arrayed against each other. We should stick to the divine qualities and shun the demonical ones. Development of the divine qualities like truth and non-violence has been going on since time immemorial, but still there is much to be done. We have to remember when we are reading this part of the explanation by Vinobha Bhave, he is a freedom fighter during the days of India, independence of India. So they were facing a lot of those situations. So that reflects in these pages. There is unlimited scope for their development in social life. Even if an individual develops himself to perfection, scope for development in the social, national, and global sphere remains. Individuals have to use their own development to stimulate development in others, just as manure stimulates growth of the crops. So this is where selfless service of Lord Krishna's principle comes into being from the Bhagavad Gita. It is not enough that we progress. We have to, as we move forward, we have to hold the hand of another brother and sister and take them forward. And that comes under the qualities of the virtue. Because if you look at the masters, they have achieved it. Why are they still serving? Because without that selfless service, there is no entry into that dimension of love. It is worth studying how non-violence has developed progressively. That will show how spirituality has progressively developed in life and how it can develop further. The problem of protection from violent attacks had always been there before the non-violent man. At first, he devised the idea of having a special class of fighters The Kshatriyas. Kshatriyas were the warriors of the ancient times, like our soldiers now. They belonged to a particular clan, and those people were allowed to fight and for the protection of the society. But later, that class itself turned against the people. The non-violent Brahmins are those teachers who are teaching people um, uh, the Vedas and the Upanishads and the good way of living. The non-violent Brahmins then had to tackle the problem of protection from the haughty and insolent Kshatriyas. Parashuram, although non-violent, took violence and started exterminating all the soldiers, the Kshatriyas. He resorted to violence to make the Kshatriyas abandon violence because he believed that the Kshatriyas, the king warriors clan, was not fair and was killing people. So he was a Brahmin, but he himself resorted to killing them. So he treated he wanted to bring about non-violence, but he himself used the violent way. This is what Vinobha Bhave is trying to say to us. He resorted to violence to make the Kshatriyas abandon violence. It was certainly an experiment in non-violence, but it could not succeed. Parashuram is said to have exterminated the warriors 21 times. Still, they survived, as the attempt was basically flawed. How can Kshatriyas, the warriors, be rooted out when you yourself become a violent Kshatriya? The seed of violence survived. One may go on cutting trees, but new trees will continue to come up so long as the seeds are not destroyed. This is a very important aspect. That is why Babaji Maharaj, in his whispers, he uses the word weeding. He says we have to pull the weeds out of our consciousness and till the soil with the sadhana. So purity reigns in the spiritual realm in our hearts. Parashuram's intention was good, but his experiment was strange. He was trying to exterminate the warrior clan of Kshatriyas by becoming a warrior himself. In fact, he should have begun by chopping off his own head. I am pointing out the flawed nature of Parashuram's experiment, not because I am wiser, I am a child before him, but I am standing on his shoulders and can therefore see much farther. And it appears to me that the basis of his experiment was wrong. Resorting to violence to counter violence results only in increasing the number of the violent. But this was not realized at that time. Good natured and well intentioned people of that time, men of non violence, experimented according to their lights. Parashuram was a firm believer in non violence, and he resorted to violence not for the sake of it, but to establish non violence. That experiment failed. Then came the age of Lord Rama. Brahmins again began to think about the matter. They had already given up violence and had resolved never to commit it. But then, how to repel attacks from the demons? They thought that the warriors have anyway taken to violence, so it is better to make them fight the demons. Vishwamitra, who was Lord Rama's guru, therefore brought Rama and Lakshman to protect his sacrificial worship known as yajna from the demons and got the demons destroyed through them. Today we think that non-violence should be able to take care of itself. It should not be dependent on others, but sages like Vashishta and Vishwamitra did not consider it infra dig to utilize the services of the warriors for their protection. But what would have happened had Vishwamitra not found Rama? He would then have preferred to die rather than take up arms. The experiment of fighting violence by violence had been a thing of the past, and the resolve to remain personally non-violent was now firm. The non-violent men were ready to die if they could not get the warriors to protect them. In the Ramayana, there is an incident wherein Rama inquires about the heaps of bones he had seen, and the sages tell him that those were the bones of the non-violent Brahmins who, on being attacked by the demons, embraced death without putting up any resistance. This type of non-violence had the element of sacrifice in it, but there was also an exception of protection from others. Such weakness cannot lead to perfect nonviolence. And this is exactly what Babuji's thoughts are. Says if somebody slaps your face, it is not like you give another cheek and let them slap, you slap them back. So like if somebody is trying to steal the money, your own hard earned money, you fight back. If somebody is trying to attack your wife, protect to the best of your capacity, do your best. But the violence that they're talking about is this heavy tendency to hurt other beings, not fighting for justice. The saints of the medieval times carried out the third experiment. They resolved, now we will never seek protection from others and rely on non-violence itself to protect us. That alone can be the true protection. This experiment was on an individual plane, and on that plane it was carried to perfection. But it did not have a social dimension. Had people asked the saints what should be done in the face of a violent attack, they would perhaps have failed to give an unequivocal answer. They would perhaps have admitted their inability to give unambiguous guidance for the people in such an eventuality. Again, it is childish impertinence on my part to blame the saints. But I am telling you what I can see standing on their shoulders. The saints should forgive me for my comments, and I am sure that they would, as they are large hearted. The thought of collective experiments in non-violence might have crossed their minds, but they must have thought that the situation was not ripe for such experiments. They made different experiments on the individual level only, but a science, after all, develops through the synthesis of experiences gained thereby. Now we are in the midst of the fourth experiment, in which the whole society is engaged in resisting violence through non-violent means. There are four experiments in non-violence. All the earlier experiments were imperfect, and our present experiment too is imperfect. This is but inevitable in the course of evolution. But in the context of their times, the experiments of the past were the best possible ones. After thousands of years, our present non-violent war too would appear to have a large measure of violence in it. There will be many more experiments in non-violence in future. Not only knowledge, action and devotion, but also all the virtues have been continually developing. Only the Lord, the Supreme Self, is perfect, none else. Purushottama Yoga, seeing the divine in the Gita, is perfect, but it is yet to be fully developed in individual and social life. So, how they are trying to eradicate this or bring into this state of being of non-violence is by seeing divine in others. When you start to see divine in others, sometimes even though there is suffering in you, you are able to forgive and you can help them overcome that state of being. And that is where the heartfulness method works, is because it removes the seeds of that violence in us and it brings us to that refined state, and you know when to act, when to protect your own things with thought, word and action. The sayings too go on acquiring new and higher meanings and connotations. The sages are considered seers of the mantras, the Vedic verses, not their authors, as they saw meanings through a vision. So the Vedas are the original vibrations, the Upanishads, and they're all the vibrations emanating from that ultimate, and the sages were able to catch that vibration and share it with others. That's why they were called seers of the mantras. But these are not the exclusive meanings of the mantras. More developed meanings can be seen by us. This is so not because there is something special in us, it is on the basis of their experiments and experiences that we go ahead. I have chosen nonviolence as an example and reviewed its development, as it is the essence of all the virtues, and also because we are engaged in a nonviolent struggle. A great experiment in nonviolence is giving up flesh eating. So far, we saw how nonviolent men devised ways for protection from violent attacks. This is one aspect of nonviolence. We saw how nonviolence has been developing in human relationships characterized by conflicts and clashes. But there is conflict between the men and the beasts too. Men have still not been able to solve the conflicts among themselves, and they are also unable to live without eating the flesh of animals of lower and weaker species. Human beings have been around for thousands of years, and still they have not thought about how to live in a way befitting the human beings. They are still unable to live like human beings. But change is taking place in this respect as well. In all probability, men in prehistoric times ate roots and fruits only. But it appears that in the course of time, perverse thinking led most of the mankind to take to flesh eating. Good and wise men, however, did not like this and laid down a restriction that if anybody wants to eat meat, he should eat the meat of animals sacrificed in yajnas only. Their intention was to minimize violence. In the course of time, some people completely abjured meat, and others who could not do so were permitted to eat it after offering the same to the Lord and undergoing some sacrifice and penance in the yajna. Permission for meat eating only in yajna was thus for limiting violence, but this was later misused on a large scale. Performance of these yajnas are sacrifices, just to have an opportunity to eat flesh became quite common. Lord Buddha came forward and said, "Eat flesh if you like, but at least do not do so in the name of the Lord." This too was to limit violence and develop self restraint. Thus, both yajnas and through their rejection, we learn to abjure meat. In this way, we gradually gave up flesh eating. This great experiment in the history of the world took place only in India. Millions of people became vegetarians. If we are vegetarians today, we can claim no credit for that. We have got used to it because of the merit of our ancestors. We are now surprised and shocked when we hear or read that the sages of yore used to eat flesh. We cannot imagine it. It is creditable that they abjured flesh through great efforts in spite of being used to it. We have inherited their virtues without any efforts on our part. The fact that they were not vegetarians and we are so does not mean that we are better. We have been benefited by their experience, and vegetarianism has now become natural to us. We should now proceed further. We should try to experiment of giving up milk also, as it is also an animal product. It is unbecoming of man to take the milk of animals. Perhaps our descendants in the distant future would be shocked to learn that their ancestors used to drink milk. They may consider us barbarians. Some of us take a vow not to take milk. Our descendants may fail to understand why a vow was necessary at all. In short, we should go on experimenting with fearlessness and humility. There is ample scope for development. No virtue has yet been developed to perfection. We will stop here and we will continue. And regarding this vegetarianism in heartfulness practices, we do not force others, yet we practice vegetarianism. One of the talks Revered Daji shared with us that how the physical energy body, the subtle body, and the absolute in the human beings, they are kind of like separate. When the physical body dies, the body disintegrates, but the impressions that are in the subtle body, they are carried along with the soul forward. Our body doesn't hold on to the impressions. Whereas in the animal kingdom, the physical body, the subtle body, and the soul somehow they are tied together in some level. And they do not create any impressions in the subtle body because there is no mind involved. Subtle body field is the field of the mind. So when the animal dies out of fear, The fear is in the body. So when we partake that meat, you are absorbing what the body is giving. You are absorbing the protein. You are also absorbing the energy field of fear from that meat eating. That is why the ancestors, they prayed, they recharged that food, released the negativity out of it in a very prayerful way. They held hands during family dinners, prayed and charged that food, and they took it. Hopefully, the protein will give the strength to the body for those warriors to fight the wars. That is why they limited meat eating to this clan of the Kshatriyas, the warriors, because they needed physical energy to fight. And for the Brahmins who did not need that physical energy, they were given sattvic food, which is known as vegetarian food. So that is why it came into. Even according to science, lately now the scientists are discovering many facts of this. One of the things that I read long time ago was when a particular fish, people who were eating that fish were getting sick, and they were doing experiments why they were getting sick. They realized when the fish, when they are killing it, in the fear, it is releasing some toxins, and that are in the body of the fish. And so when people were eating that, that toxins were making them sick. So they had to do the fishing industry. They had to do it in such a way that before the fish releases the toxins, they are making it into kind of sleep and then kill it so it doesn't release the toxins. So for us, anything we put into our mouth, body, mind, and the soul has to be purified because our goal is moving towards purity. So our thought has to fill with love and transmit that love into the food. And whatever is in front of you, you partake it in divine remembrance. So your inner field doesn't develop these violent tendencies. When you are eating animals, the violent tendency of the animal is what you are partaking. And because of that, if you notice, some people are very violent. They can't control their passions, they can't control their anger. It is all because of this past habits that have created patterns. And now we are undoing those patterns with the sadhana, with meditation, refining our mind, refining our energy field, with the cleansing, releasing these impurities of the energy field, releasing the patterns. And that is why we have to take care of the body, the mind, and thereby the spirit. And taking care of the body is where we practice what we are eating, the habits we develop. Everything lies in our habits. So, beautiful teachings from our master, and beautiful book of Vinobha Bhave. Let us all now meditate.